What if two of the world's most ancient and influential religions, Buddhism and Hinduism, didn't just share roots, but also diverged over deep philosophical differences that would shape the spiritual history of an entire continent? The story of their rise isn't just one of shared teachings, but of tension, transformation, and survival. But the plot thickens. Just as these two religions were growing and evolving, a third faith, Islam, entered the picture, forever changing the religious landscape of the East. How did these forces collide, and what impact did they have on each other? In this video, we dive deep into the intertwined origins of Buddhism and Hinduism, the key ideas that separated them, and the role that Islam played in reshaping their fates. The origins of Buddhism and Hinduism. Hinduism is one of the world's oldest religions, with its roots in the Vedic tradition of ancient India, dating back to around 1500 BCE. The Vedas, sacred texts outlining rituals, hymns, and philosophical concepts, formed the foundation of early Hinduism. Buddhism, however, emerged much later, around the 5th century BCE, with the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, who later became known as the Buddha. Born into a Hindu society, Siddhartha encountered many of the concepts central to Hindu thought, such as karma and rebirth. So, was Buddhism derived from Hinduism? In some ways, yes. Buddhism emerged from the same religious and cultural context as Hinduism, which is the older religion and makes it the older brother of Buddhism. But rather than being a direct offshoot, Buddhism offered a radical reinterpretation of certain Hindu ideas, especially concerning the caste system, rituals, and the concept of self. Buddhism rejected the caste system and introduced the doctrine of anatta, or no self, contrasting sharply with Hinduism's belief in a permanent soul, Atman. A brief overview of Hindu and Buddhist philosophy. Let's take a closer look at the key philosophical differences between Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hindu philosophy, the belief in Atman, the eternal soul or true self, is central. It is considered part of the universal consciousness known as Brahman, and liberation, moksha, is achieved by realizing the unity between Atman and Brahman. Another essential concept is dharma, the set of ethical and moral duties based on one's caste and stage of life, and karma, the law of cause and effect that influences future lives. Traditional Hinduism also upholds the caste system, a social hierarchy that assigns individuals specific roles based on birth. In contrast, Buddhist philosophy challenges many of these ideas. The doctrine of anatta teaches that there is no permanent self or soul. Instead, the self is seen as a temporary collection of physical and mental elements. Central to Buddhism is the recognition of dukkha, or suffering, which is caused by craving and attachment. The ultimate goal in Buddhism is to achieve nirvana, a state free from suffering and the cycle of rebirth, rather than uniting with a universal soul. Buddhism also advocates for a balanced, moderate approach to spiritual practice called the middle path, rejecting both extreme asceticism and indulgence. These key differences in their understanding of the self, liberation, and social structure were the primary points of divergence between the two religions. Countries, followers, and regions where Hinduism and Buddhism dominate. Hinduism and Buddhism, both having originated in India, have since spread to various regions of the world, establishing strong presences outside of their homeland. In India, Hinduism remains the dominant religion, with around 80% of the population identifying as Hindu. This is the largest concentration of Hindus in the world. Nepal follows closely, with about 81% of its population practicing Hinduism. In Mauritius, over 48% of the population continues to observe Hindu traditions, a legacy of Indian migration during colonial times. Meanwhile, on the island of Bali in Indonesia, Hinduism remains the major religion, despite Indonesia being predominantly Muslim. Buddhism has also spread widely across Asia. In Thailand, around 95% of the population follows Theravada Buddhism, making it the dominant belief system in the country. Similarly, Myanmar has a predominantly Buddhist population, with about 88% of its people adhering to Theravada Buddhism. In Sri Lanka, approximately 70% of the population practices the same form of Buddhism. Tibet, in contrast, follows Tibetan Buddhism, which is part of the Vajrayana tradition, and in Bhutan, about 75% of the population practices Mahayana Buddhism, which is the state religion. Japan, while often blending Buddhism with Shinto practices, has a strong Buddhist presence, with schools such as Zen and Pure Land Buddhism playing a major role in spiritual life. Globally, Hinduism has around 1.2 billion followers, making it the third largest religion worldwide, with most adherents concentrated in India and Nepal. Buddhism has approximately 520 million followers, or about 7% of the world's population, with significant communities in Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Tibet. These regions illustrate how each religion has adapted to local cultures and established a lasting presence, philosophical tensions, and the decline of Buddhism in India. Though Buddhism and Hinduism coexisted in India for centuries, tensions between the two gradually grew. Buddhism's rejection of the caste system and the concept of a permanent self clashed with Hindu beliefs in Atman and caste-based Dharma. Buddhism flourished during the reign of Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE, as he adopted and promoted Buddhist teachings throughout Asia. However, by the 5th century CE, the Gupta Empire, which supported Hinduism, began favoring Brahmanical traditions over Buddhist teachings. This shift in political power led to the decline of Buddhism in India. Hindu philosophers such as Shankaracharya, who championed Advaita Vedanta, critiqued Buddhist concepts, particularly the denial of the self. The intellectual resurgence of Hinduism further weakened Buddhism's influence. Without state patronage, Buddhist monasteries and institutions struggled, while Hinduism, with its strong temple-based worship, remained resilient. Over time, these factors contributed to Buddhism's decline as a major religion in India. The role of Islamic invasions in Buddhism's decline. In addition to philosophical and political challenges, external invasions further accelerated Buddhism's decline. In the 12th century, Islamic invaders targeted major cultural and religious centers, including Nalanda University, a renowned hub of Buddhist learning. Many monasteries were destroyed, and monks either fled to other regions like Tibet and Southeast Asia or were killed. Hinduism, with its decentralized and temple-based system, proved more resilient to Islamic invasions. While both Hindu and Buddhist sites were attacked, Hinduism was better equipped to survive due to its deep integration into the social and cultural fabric of the Indian subcontinent. Buddhism, which relied heavily on monastic institutions, faced greater difficulty recovering from these invasions. The revival of Buddhism in India and beyond. Despite its decline in India, Buddhism experienced a revival in the 20th century, largely due to the efforts of B.R. Ambedkar, a social reformer and leader of the Dalit movement. Ambedkar, born into a low-caste family, sought liberation from the caste-based discrimination of Hinduism and embraced Buddhism as a path to equality and justice. In 1956, Ambedkar led a mass conversion of Dalits to Buddhism, marking the beginning of a modern revival of Buddhism in India, particularly in Maharashtra. Outside India, Buddhism has grown significantly in the West. Practices such as Zen Buddhism and Vipassana meditation have gained popularity, with meditation centers and retreats flourishing in countries like the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. Public figures and celebrities have embraced these practices, contributing to Buddhism's rising global profile. Additionally, Tibetan Buddhism has garnered worldwide attention through the influence of the 14th Dalai Lama, who has become an iconic figure for peace and compassion. As a result, Buddhism continues to evolve and expand, becoming a truly global religion. The decline of Buddhism in India was shaped by a complex mix of philosophical debates, political shifts, and external invasions. Although Buddhism and Hinduism share common roots, they developed into distinct traditions with unique approaches to life, death, and the self. Today, both religions continue to thrive in different parts of the world, offering valuable insights into the path towards spiritual liberation. Thanks for watching. If this exploration of the history of Buddhism and Hinduism gave you new insights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think these two religions have shaped each other over time?